Here we go. We are live now. So welcome, Joe.
Well, good morning, Richard. It's always good to be back with you and with our audience. Our faith audience means a lot to us, and we're so
Yep.
grateful for those who will be joining us, who are joining us right now. And we're going to wait just a few minutes
Yeah.
till everybody finds their seats.
Yeah, absolutely. It's awesome that we have this audience. Love getting together with our audience of faith, especially to be able to share when we have such great guests, including today, to just really speak into this terrible issue, but to bring Jesus into it.
Yeah.
It's really an awesome opportunity and a privilege to be able to connect people to the living King. And
Yes.
so this is a
Yes.
really, it's just been a powerful year. So much has happened over the last year. So many great lives, and so it's just been
Yeah.
really good. Yeah.
Yes. And speaking of, this week on Wednesday, the 15th, I hosted a webinar for Shared Hope, which would
Mm,
be on their training site. It would be on what we do, prevent, and then training under pre recorded webinars. And it was a panel of three survivors, powerful women who shared the role of faith in recovery. And they shared their own story. And then they answered questions from us and from the audience, where we asked them about their journey from the beginning, how the church may have played a role in their exploitation or in their hope of getting out, and
hmm
then how their families were a part of that, and just their stories. And then they led right into the middle of their story, which was just amazing, where
Yeah.
they talked about that moment when they knew that they were going to be free, and how they found
Wow.
that resourcefulness and that courage and that strength, and how they cried out to God. And
Wow.
then I loved this part. They were very, very transparent and
Mm,
real about the time while they were being exploited, when they were mad at
wow.
God, and where
Wow.
they spoke honestly to God and said, "Why did you let this happen to me?" It was, I think, the most heartfelt and affecting to me
Mm,
part of the interview. And many of our audience said they wept during that time because they
yeah.
identified with those feelings, hard things they'd gone through, when
Yeah.
they were like, "God, you could have stopped this and you didn't." But then these
Mm,
amazing women brought in how God was using them now to restore others. And then we went into really practical tips about how you, as the faith audience, how the church, and how even the audience at large
yeah.
can walk alongside, support, and help survivors. So it was a powerful broadcast, and I hope you'll go check
Wow.
it out. Richard put the link there on the
Yeah.
screen, and it'll be available there on recorded webinars, probably available next week, not today.
Yeah. And then last Friday, our very own Kelly McCoy was able to do a Facebook Live with Mary Rohde, which was another very powerful moment,
Yeah,
very heartbreaking moment. And I just encourage everybody who didn't have a
yeah,
chance to see that to please go back to our Facebook page and look for A Parent's Worst Nightmare. It's an interview with Mary Rohde. She lost her son to online predators, and it's a heartbreaking story. But if we listen, there are things we can do to stop this from happening again and again and again. So just
that's right.
encourage anybody to go listen to that.
Yeah. And Mary's story, it was heartrending.
Mm.
Gave so many practical tips for
Yeah,
parents, what to watch for, what she might have done, how she might have helped. So, yeah, it's been a month. It's been a really amazing month. I
yeah,
appreciate that Shared Hope has the hard conversations.
yeah.
Not always easy to hear,
Right.
but very necessary, and shining a light in the darkness and saying, look, here's what's happening. Here's what you can do about it. So we're so glad that you're joining us today for another such program.
Yes.
And I can hardly wait to introduce our guest, but I will, because we're not live yet, because everyone
Yep.
is coming in right
Yep.
now.
Yep. Yep. We just 10 more seconds and we'll really be live, even though we're live now. But But
If
yeah,
people have questions, how do they do that, Richard?
go ahead and leave those questions in the comments, and we will answer them as we go, especially while Joe and our special guest are going with their interview. Please leave your questions down in the comments, and we will absolutely get to them. But now we are for real live, and so now we can really start. And so, hello, welcome to our community of faith. Thank you guys so much for being with us over and over again. We really appreciate it. Really appreciate you just joining us. It's amazing the common bond that we have, in our personal faith and our relationship with Jesus. We've been praying over and over every month after month. Hey, Lisa, thank you for joining us again. Appreciate you being here. And so we really just appreciate everyone being a part of this for the last year. And if you know God, you know that He is more than able to answer our prayers. And we've put a lot of prayer out there, but He is the God that answers. And so we just want you to continue to be with us. And you also know that sometimes we have to prevail in prayer. And it seems like we're knocking. And that's just the way it is sometimes. But God answers. And whatever it looks like, we just have to remember that God does answer prayer. And so that's what we've just been doing. God answer prayer. And we're going to continue praying.
Yes, He does answer prayer. And in my own life, there have been times His answer has been not yet. And I'm not always happy about those. But later on, when the answer comes, it's so perfect timing and makes me so aware that God does answer, and He gives us the desire of our heart. He may not answer the prayer we asked, but He gives us the desire of our heart. So we want to thank you for being with us again today for Facebook Live. We're talking about the role of restoration, of faith in restoration. And on this program, in the past, you've met so many of our guests who can attest to how faith helped them in finding freedom, how faith helps prevent trafficking, and how shared hope develops tools and resources, often including prayer in the process. And we always talk about ways that you, our audience, can be effective in helping to keep kids safe, helping victims find freedom, and being there for someone who needs you. It's a powerful time we've spent together.
Yeah. And we've had professionals, we've had survivor leaders who are also professionals. And today, our guest is someone that we highly respect in the field of direct service and training, as well as telling her own story of faith and restoration. Joe, do you want to just go ahead and do the introductions?
Yes, I would love to introduce our audience to my friend, a fellow believer, and a highly respected professional for her restoration work. In your email invitation to this program, you read Kathy Bryan is a respected international speaker, consultant, mentor, and author. She's trained thousands of professionals on how to identify and respond to those victimized by human trafficking, including medical personnel, Homeland Security, anti-trafficking organizations, churches, and so many more. Her bio lists at least 42 places where she has presented, and that's just a short list of the places where she's trained. She's testified before the D.C. Council several times before her own home state, Arkansas Congress, resulting in the passage of 3 new laws. She's a consultant for the Department of Homeland Security's Blue Campaign, a member of both the National Survivor Network and the Survivor Leader Institute, and serves on the board of Into the Light. Kathy is driven by a belief that all people should live in freedom, a belief long held before she survived sex trafficking as a teen. But we are going to let you tell that story herself. So it is truly my honor to host you. Kathy Bryan, welcome.
Hey, Joe, it is so great to see you, my friend. Thank you for having me on.
I wish we were in the same room. We're not even in the same state. But let's start telling your story. Kind of, you have a beginning, a middle, and now a current. What's going on in your life, what God has done in your life. So let's start with you telling our audience how faith played a role in your own personal recovery.
Oh, faith is it's intense because I came to the Lord when I was 11. And that was obviously it was like 3 years before I was to be trafficked. I was at a youth group. We had a speaker come through town, and I was just enamored with with her faith. Like I already had a faith in the Lord. I'd already accepted him, but it was still like this fledgling journey. And she lived completely by faith. She was a traveling missionary, and she just trusted the Lord for everything, from her finances to her shelter to where she was going next. And I just loved the intensity of that devout faith. And I could see reflected in her journey how faithful he was. And it just, I don't know, it stirred me. So move forward I guess my trafficking started when I was 15. And so 4 years later, I was the only person in the home who had a relationship with Jesus. And we had moved from my small town in northern New York to this huge metropolis of Virginia Beach, Norfolk, that area of the country. And so it was still a new, but I trusted him. He just allowed me to have this. I just trusted him. I knew that nothing bad was going to come from him. And I think that sustained me through the experience, because I was trafficked for 2.5 years, while I was still going to school, while I was still living at home. I mean, in that time period, I got my first job when I was 16, working at a bank. And I don't know that I would have survived without that faith, but my faith is also, he is the place where the majority of my healing has come from. There's all kinds of things that we can do to find healing from trauma, but yeah, the vast majority is the Lord.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really powerful. I know when you and I talked, you just said that you were going to school, you were a typical teenager, you were working at a bank. I'm sure our audience is sort of taken back at that, because this is while you were living at home that you were being trafficked. And so a lot of them aren't even aware they may be meeting a survivor or victim of trafficking in their everyday life. It may be their little teenage bank teller. So you were being forced into the commercial sex trade all during that time. And I know that all of our audience wants to keep kids safe from this kind of horrific exploitation. What could people have seen or done during those years? Was there anything while you were being trafficked that they could have done to help you?
First of all, I think that it's important to remember that children are super vulnerable. I think that sounds obvious when I say it, but in our everyday life of getting kids up, getting them on the bus, getting them to school, getting them to soccer, coming home, shopping, doing all of the mundane day-to-day life stuff, a lot of times as parents, we're just overwhelmed. We're checking boxes, and it's easy to forget that our kids are just so vulnerable. They're the tiniest human beings, and they're learning everything, right? They need love. They need acceptance. They want reassurance. They're very, even if you have the perfect, which nobody's perfect, but if you have like the best set of parents, a home that doesn't have any abuse in it, both parents are there, you still have children going through the phases of growth, and that entails insecurity, just insecurity from not knowing who you are yet, not knowing your own identity, not fitting in, hashtag fill in all the things that you as a person, not you, Joe, but all of us watching. If you think back to school, how you felt, how you didn't fit in, you might felt like you were the outside looking in. All of those vulnerabilities are the things that traffickers target. Yes, they target minorities, kids from foster care, broken homes, runaways. Yes, but there's no child who's not vulnerable, because we are inherently vulnerable. And so for me, it's just being aware. It's taking the time to build relationship from your child from the moment they set foot on the planet. Like all of us as parents go, well, you could have parent to make sure that that's not just a phrase you say, but that you've put in the work, that that child knows if they do the worst thing ever, your past relationship has proven that they really can come to you. Because while I was being trafficked, the threats, the abuse, my trafficker held my sister over my head. At the time I started being trafficked, she was 5 years old. And based on the behavior I had received from him, the abuse, the assault, the rapes, and he says, you'll do what I say and you'll be where I tell you to be when I tell you to be there, or else your sister, Cassandra, I believed him because he'd already proven his behavior, right? If he'll do that to me and then he points to her. So I was so compliant because there was this huge, I thought I was holding my sister's life in my hands, as well as the rest of the family. Mm-hmm. So traffickers are incredibly wily. They know what to look for. And honestly, it's not like they're out there holding out candy bars. They're giving our kids and adults who end up getting trafficked the most basic human things, needs, which are love, acceptance, attention, validation. Yeah. That's that grooming period where they're winning your trust. So if a trafficker can love somebody into trafficking, then we can love them out, right? It's relationship. Yeah. So while I was being trafficked, to answer your other question, what could people have noticed? Because I was going to school, was working, was driving around. I didn't have handcuffs on me every day, right? But there are things you can notice, like how many times have you heard a parent go, oh, God, she's just being a teenager. She won't talk to me. She stays in her room. Her grades are failing or dropping, all of these things. And then your friend's like, oh, it's okay, Sally. She's just being a teenager. She'll grow out of it. If your child has never acted that way before, that's a huge red flag. And I've heard parents say over and over and over, it's those teenage years, it's the hardest ones, which is true. Mm-hmm. But if their behavior radically changes, that's a huge red flag. So for me, if you were to look backwards, I stopped hanging out with my best friend because I was afraid to expose her to what was happening to me. What if he got her? I was exhausted because I was going to school every day, coming home, helping mom around the house, trying to keep up appearances there, I was the oldest of 5, so I always helped the kids with their homework and was like the second mom in the house. And then, of course, when I got my job, then I would work and then do all of that. And then every night I would kind of go to bed, quote unquote, around 9:30 or 10 and wait for the house to get quiet. And then I would sneak out and meet him at the rendezvous point where he would pick me up and take me to residences. Like I wasn't sold on the street. And I'm old. Can you tell? I'm like 55.
No.
So this was in the early 80s. So there was no internet then. And there was still way too many buyers. But I was sold in residences, apartments, homes, houses. And then he would drop me back off at my house. I might get a couple hours of sleep. So there's exhaustion. The other thing, wearing clothes that don't fit in season. I always wonder why nobody said, geez, it's like 90. Why do you have on a turtleneck? Well, I had a turtleneck because I was trying to mask things that were on my neck that shouldn't have been there. Whether that was bruises from being strangled or hickeys or any of that kind of scratches, that kind of stuff. I had ligature marks, so I would wear long sleeves. In Virginia, at 90-degree weather, that's a red flag. It's something minor. Mm-hmm. I'd always been an A student. My grades plummeted. I was withdrawn because I was so scared. So all of those seem like innocuous. Well, she's not doing good in school. Her clothes have changed. Her friends have changed. But when you put them all together, that demands investigation. What's going on with this kid?
Mm-hmm. I've had one person, well, not just one, several, but the question they said is it would it help a kid to say, is there something you want me to know? One teacher told me that she always asked that question at the beginning of each school year. She would have the kids write about their summer. And then at the bottom of that form she gave them, and these were, fourth, fifth, sixth graders, is there something you want me to know? And she told me this opened a lot of doors. Is that something that you would think is a good thing when you were a kid? If someone had said, Kathy, is there something you want me to know?
I mean, I think it's always better to ask that and have them not answer than to not ask and miss out on possibly getting an answer. Always ask questions where they can't say yes or no, like open-ended questions where there has to be more of a response. Like, that question was a great question. Or I would probably add to it, if you knew that you would be safe telling me, is there anything you would want to share with me?
That's good.
I was so convinced. Here's the thing that I want people to know. It's so imperative to look for all the things, like all the things I just talked about, to be so aware of your kids' friends and where they go and who they hang out with. And because the majority of the time it's somebody they know. We always think stranger danger, back in the 80s, stop, drop, and roll, stranger danger, but it's usually somebody Even in my situation, I knew him for a full 6 months before anything went weird. And so 6 months, if your child knows somebody for 6 months on a fairly daily basis, they're not going to, in their mind, think that that's a stranger, right?
That's
this
right.
is somebody I know. But that question, I would definitely ask that, and have places, people that are invested in that child that they trust, like the school counselor, the nurses, their favorite teacher. If they're equipped to ask those type of questions, it's a good chance that they might say something. I feel like personally, a police officer could have just been looking me dead in the eyes and saying, what's going on? Tell me, I'm here to help you. And I would have said, I'm fine. I don't know what you're talking about, because of all of the abuse and the deep root. There's such a fear. I to this day can still not completely explain the depth of that fear, and how powerful it is. I was terrified for my sister. And over the course of the 2 years of being trafficked, he, because again, this was the 80s, it was pre-cell phone. I don't even know that pagers were out yet. And still, in that 2 years, he ended up meeting everybody in my family. And he would use these subtle threats to keep me in line, like, oh, I ran into your mom at the grocery store. You guys are having lasagna this week. Or I saw your brother Jamie got a new bike for his birthday. So it was these things that made me know that I was always being watched, and that he knew, even when I wasn't with him.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
They're very
you talked a little
crafty.
bit. Yes, and they learn so much, and it's like a friendship at first, and so your guard is down. You kind of share a whole bunch of stuff with them. You mentioned that you had known him for about 6 months before things started moving. Could you share just a bit about how you met this man? And I love the end of that story and the way you shared the miraculous way that you were given back your freedom. Would you mind sharing that with us?
Absolutely. So I was raised the majority of my life in this tiny town in upper New York. And when I was 15, we moved to Virginia, like I said. It wasn't too long after I got there that I met this girl in English class. We became fast friends. And just so happened she only lived like 10 blocks from me. So like in the audience, who of you would have a 15-year-old that would not let them walk 10 blocks to their friend's house? That seems like in a middle-class neighborhood, that seems like a pretty normal thing to do and safe. However, it is on that walk that I met him. He was standing outside on an entryway to a townhouse, and I walked by and he said hi, and I said hi. I always joke that if this happened in New York, I wouldn't have been trafficked, because in New York, when people say hi to you, you just keep walking.
My husband's from New York. Yeah,
South,
exactly.
The new manners. And so I said hi. But anyway, So for some reason, I walked to Noreen's house about easily 3 or 4 times a week because she had all of her siblings were already moved out. I was the oldest of 5. It was so much easier to study at her house. Plus, we had a little privacy. And so I was there a lot. And every time I walked to her house, he was there. In fact, I thought that was his home. And come to find out months and months later, dude didn't even live there. Anyway, over the course of this 6 months, the conversations just went from hi, how are you, to, they just went deeper. And he was not, there was no weirdness. It was like he was just a neighbor. He was just talking like over the fence kind of talk. But I was at this place where I was a year ahead in school, but I was in a whole brand new school. I wanted to be a doctor. That's what I'd wanted to be since I was 2. So I was already looking for colleges. And all he did was do what my parents, my guidance counselor should have been doing. And that was helping answer those questions. Because I was like, I don't know how to do this. How am I going to pay for it? What college should I go? And he just fed my dream. I will help you with scholarships. I know some really good colleges. I know somebody here at this college that was right there in Virginia, so I wouldn't have to leave my family because, again, I was like the second mom. And he was just like, I've got connections there. He was just feeding that dream. And so I had this sense of safety with him. And then about right around 6 months into it, he asked me to go to lunch one day. And that was when things started changing. I started feeling like, oh, this is kind of like a date. And so we went to lunch, and he used to take me for long drives to the ocean because we lived right near the beach, which was one of my favorite things. Mm-hmm. And even through all that, never did anything. Didn't try to hold my hand or kiss me or any of that. About a month of that, where we're dating, and he asked me to go dancing one night. Now, I'm like 15 and a half by this time. What kid wouldn't be like, what? Yeah, let's go. So I was so excited. And he picked me up. I got in the car. We started driving, and he said, oh, man, I forgot something at my house. And I was like, okay. I'd been to his house once at that point. And we drove over there, got out, walked inside, and I followed him into the living room, and he stopped in front of the fireplace. And that's when he kissed me for the first time. He just kind of hugged me and kissed me. And as I was in that embrace, another man walked into the living room, already completely nude, and they proceeded to rape and sodomize me for about 2 hours on the floor of the living room. When they were done, they got up and went to the kitchen, literally started making sandwiches. That's a whole nother story, because I saw in the Bible where after they sold Jacob, they literally went and ate. It just resonated with me. But anyway, dovetail. Yeah. I got up off the floor. Of course, I'm totally traumatized, terrified. Yeah. And there was a half bathroom right there off of the living room. And I ran in there and I locked the door because I thought that I remembered that there was a window in there. And so my plan was, I'm getting out of here. I'm going to climb out the window. But when I got in there, I remembered wrong. And now I was trapped in the bathroom. There was no window. So I finally came up with plan B, which was open the door super slow so it doesn't make any creaking noise, and just make a flat out run for the front door. But as soon as I got that door open and stepped out, he was immediately right there in front of me. And he was talking. I couldn't understand him at first. It was like, if you've ever been swimming and you're underwater and the people outside of the water are talking, and it's like, you can't really hear them, but you know they're talking. That was how it was until he said my sister's name. And he said, from this day forward, you'll be where I tell you to be when I tell you to be there, or else Cassandra. And he took his arm and he pointed slowly back to where they'd assaulted me on the floor. And I was, for the next 2.5 years. I mean, that started that odyssey of craziness. And, which I've told you earlier in the show, they just took me to different homes, probably 4 to 5 nights a week. People would come, do what they wanted, and then they'd take me home. I'd get a couple hours of sleep and go to school. And then one day, right before graduation or right after, I can't really remember, he picked me up like usual, and we were cutting through Norfolk, and all of a sudden he pulled over into this little shopping center, and it just had 3 stores, like a convenience store, a bar, and something else. And it's like almost midnight at this point, and I'm just, my alarm bells are going off because I'm like, this is abnormal. What's going on? And we're walking across the parking lot, and all of a sudden he just stopped under the street light, and he turns around and he looked at me, and I can still see, like right now as I'm telling you, I can still see his face, and he looked like he had never seen me before. It was so strange. He just looked at me and he said, I don't want to ever see you again. Don't try to find me. Don't try to contact me. Don't go to anywhere I've ever taken you. Don't try to contact any of the people that you've met. Really weird way to put it, and I wouldn't. But, and then he grabbed me by the shoulders and he kissed me on the forehead. He pushed me away, and he said, this is the only way I can protect you. And then he did that, pushed me away, got in the car, and left me standing there in the middle of that parking lot, midnight. I don't have the recollection of how I got home. But it was, I think if you're watching, people are like, yay, she's free, sweet. And you would expect I'd be jumping for joy, but you're so incredibly traumatized. At this point, I was like I was like a shell of a person. Like, I felt like a floating head. I was disconnected from my body. I didn't feel like emotion really anymore. In fact, if anything, I felt abandoned. Not that I wanted to go through what I was going through, but there's not another word that really is like, what just happened, and what do I do now, and what the heck does this is the only way I can save you mean? Because he was a man trafficker. It just didn't make any sense to me. I felt strongly that it was the Lord intervening, especially the way he looked at me, like he was in this daze almost. And it was just a very weird situation that I'm very, very grateful for.
Yes. What a miracle.
Yeah. It was a
Wouldn't
miracle.
you love to have seen the angels that the Lord sent that had him like in a headlock and making him say that and push you away, and say those words? I mean, that's just miraculous. Now, I know that your journey to where you are today has had lots of hills and valleys. You talked about the deep trauma and like it wasn't just, yay, I'm free, and then you were free. But in your own restoration, what would you say is like one roadblock that has gotten in the way of your relationship with Christ? Because I know you called out to him many times during that time, and now here you were suddenly free. And what was it that you had to move through?
I think for all of us, you don't have to be trafficked to have a hard time relating to the Lord and allowing him to do amazing things in your life. I think for me, it was my humanness. Like, it was me. I got in the way. My trauma got in the way. It's funny. I never blamed God for it. And I'm not saying that that's not a normal reaction. It's just, we're all different. And I didn't ever blame him for it. I felt his presence so many times. Like, I feel like there were multiple times that my life was saved when I should have been dead. And I'm sure a lot of survivors can say that. It's a very, very dangerous thing that we've been going through. But for me, the shame that comes from that abuse. And I know as humans, we all have shame. I think shame is really one of the enemy's number one tools to keep us away from the Lord. Like, Jesus did above and beyond everything he could do to make that bridge so that we could be in relationship with the Lord. And so the enemy, he's a created being just like we are. And so he only has the same tools he uses over and over. And it's shame and lies and deceit. That's all he uses. And the shame from being used so grievously, you end up feeling like an object, not a human. And I remembered I needed Jesus that I had met. And the shame and the filth and the just it just kept me from him. Like, I didn't want it to touch him, right? I didn't think I'd ever go back into the church ever again, because I felt so unworthy. But, God is bigger.
Yes,
Thank
he
you,
is.
Lord. And I don't think I shared this with you, but I had a friend, like, raise your hand if you've ever had a friend who found the Lord, and they're like that little puppy that's like, they're so excited, which is great. But
Yes.
these were our best friends at the time, and they would not stop asking us to go to church with them. And I'm in this place that I just described of just feeling so gross. And they're like, oh, come to church with us. We found Jesus. And I was like, please quit asking me to come to church.
Yeah.
Anyway, they wore me down. And finally, we went to church one day. And of course, it was a contemporary church, non-denominational. But that was, of course, the one day that they did an altar call. And I'm sitting there after this amazing service, just weeping. And they do the altar call, and I sit there all stoic, like I'm not going. And I literally felt a hand on my back pushing me. There was nobody behind me pushing me. And so I went down the little stairs, and I was just praying and sobbing, just like the worst ugly cry you've ever seen, just devastated, and just letting it all out, and having this conversation with the Holy Spirit in my head. And just like I said a minute ago, I just didn't want all this to touch him. I felt so, I don't know, awful. Yeah. And the Holy Spirit literally whispered, but it already has. And I saw the cross. And that's when I realized, anything any of us has ever gone through, Jesus has already experienced. Yes. He already knows. He's already, what I mean? And there was just this release of like, oh, I don't have to protect him from me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes that's what we do. Even if you don't know him and you're not trying to protect him, you just don't think that you're worthy.
Yeah.
But he makes us worthy.
Yes. Yes. And none of us are immune to that.
My road back. I'm sorry.
No, I said none of us are immune to that. That's the lie of the devil,
Exactly.
is you don't deserve God. But you broke through that.
Right.
Well, part of your story that I'm excited to talk about next is how you have really taken the tip of the sword and driven it into the enemy's heart, because what was meant to destroy you, you've now done amazing work. And Shared Hope has been a partner funding Rebecca Bender Initiatives, the Elevate program, from its beginning. And you've been the executive director, lead mentor. You've been using your wisdom and what experiences you've had to guide hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of survivors as they've navigated their way into their healing journey and professional growth. And so let's talk about your experience when you're meeting survivors at the intersection of faith and restoration. What does Kathy Bryan do there? I know you wait on the Lord. I know you pray for them. But how do you approach that intersection?
I have to say, working with survivors is one of the, and working at RBI is one of the biggest honors of my life. If you are out there and you get the opportunity to work with a survivor of anything, it's an honor when somebody allows you to walk that journey with them.
Yeah.
And I don't think that a lot of us take it. It can be taken for granted, and that's a huge honor. And I've been honored to do that. And you're right, it has been hundreds of people. I worked with RBI for 7 years, and one of the best things I've ever done. But what I do with the students, and honestly with anybody, even in my everyday life, is I remember who Jesus is, right? I don't want to get in his way. And if we hold people with an open hand, that's the key. Like, Jesus doesn't need me to do it. We just need to get out of the way so he can do it. And one of the courses, we had multiple courses for survivors to go through at Elevate Academy, and it really is a fantastic program. One of them is faith-based. And honestly, it's probably almost 100% of students who come through take it. So, but it is faith-based. And what I would do is at the beginning, when a student comes to Elevate, there's an orientation or an interview. You kind of answer questions and tell them what to expect. Mm-hmm. One of the things I always did is say, listen, this course is faith-based. You're welcome to take it. You're welcome to not take it. It's up to you. You know, it's all about letting them have control of all of us. We want control of what we're doing. And they would, you know, like, if you're faith-based, great. If you're not faith-based, great. Take it if you want to, and just take what you need and leave the rest. We're not going to force you to believe what we believe or what I believe or what, you know, somebody else believes. And I would use an analogy, and feel free to steal this if you want, or maybe you think it's goofy, but this is how I explained it. I was like, I can't force you to have a relationship with your neighbor. I definitely can't force you to have a relationship with Jesus. And it would be ludicrous to try. That's on you, you know, and maybe I would take it a step further depending on how they went. But, you know, a relationship with God is not about rules and regulations. It's not this giant checklist. Did it. Oh, I'm good. I'll go to heaven. That's not what it's about. It's the most beautiful, deep relationship. But it depends on you and Jesus, and you're the only two who can create it. So I can't do anything except I could screw it up by, you know, misrepresenting him, which I think, honestly, there's so many humans in the world who have experienced spiritual abuse, and survivors, I would say 40 to 50% who come through have had some form of spiritual abuse. And I don't mean just satanic ritual abuse. I mean abuse in their local church, whether that's Protestant, Catholic, Muslim, Buddha, it doesn't matter, fill in the blank. Okay. But they've experienced it. So they don't want somebody else trying to shove their belief down their throat. The most miraculous thing happens when you hold it like that. This is still one of my, I don't think I can say favorite, but it comes to mind when I think of this subject. This gentleman went through Elevate, and he let me know at the beginning that he was a complete atheist, and I was like, that you're still welcome here, and I won't try to push anything on you. He went through the whole 16-week course. At the time it was 16 weeks, and I was true to my word. He let us, we took the students through in small groups at the time. We do that again now. So there was 5 other students besides himself, and then the last one, he asked if he could share something, and we were like, sure. And he shared that because of the group and the course, that he had come back to the Lord in that 16 weeks, and he was experiencing this relationship that he didn't know was possible, and he was just so thankful. And that had nothing to do with me, right? It was because I was hands off and still loving. You know, love wins. It's one of my biggest things. # love wins. Just love people where they are, and let the Lord do the rest. So.
I love that. I love that. You know, when I tell people about you often, Kathy, I've described you as a mama bear, and you've seen that in some of the email introductions. It's because there are tangible ways that you can be there for kids who are at risk, for their families, kids who are being trafficked, a parent who's at their wit's end. I've seen you. You stop at nothing to do all that you can to be there for them. And I know you're still doing lots and lots of things, even though you're no longer the executive director at Elevate. So tell the audience just a little bit about your current work, your availability as a speaker, a trainer, a mentor, a consultant. What's Kathy Bryan doing now?
Joe, you are such an encourager. I think you're one of my biggest cheerleaders. Thank you so much for your kind words.
I'm one of them. I'm sure I'm not the biggest, but I am definitely one of them.
Well, as you said, I resigned from RBI in June of this year. It was probably one of the hardest decisions I've ever made, but it was how the Lord was leading me. I did that because I really have got to start. I have already started writing the book he asked me to do I don't know, in 2011. This is 10 years later, y'all. I'm so not on the ball, but I've been doing a lot of really hard work. So I'm working on the book. I feel a little behind because I got the worst case of COVID. I've lost the last 2 months of my life to COVID, but I'm back and I'm rebuilding my website. I'm working on my book. I'm doing a lot of consulting. I love doing consulting with individuals and organizations that serve survivors. I still do trainings and speaking engagements, whether it's a keynote, a breakout session, a conference, or a faith-based event. I love doing all of those. That's what I'm doing, and I'm excited about it. I think I'll always mentor. I think I mentored before I started mentoring at Elevate. I think it says counselor on my forehead if you have a black light or something. I don't know.
I think as the oldest of 5, you were mentoring from the time you were very, very young. So that's part of your DNA. Now, if someone would want to reach out to you, obviously they can email Shared Hope at savelives@sharedhope.org. Or is there another way that you would like them to reach out to you? I'm dying to get your book. I can't wait. So get on the stick there, girl. I want to see your book. And just by way of encouragement, my husband started writing a book clear back in 2014, and it was just released this week. So you're in good company. It takes a while. And when the time is perfect.
I love Nick.
Oh, I love Nick too. I'm going to keep him. So when the time is perfect, that door will open. So you keep doing the work that you're doing. But if people want to reach out to you, how do they reach Kathy Bryan?
Well, like you said, through you've got my number. Seriously. My website is kathybryan.com, Kathy Bryan, Bryan.com. So it's super easy. There's a contact form there, and contact information. You can use Facebook, but I will say Facebook, for me, maybe I'm a little scattered, but I'm always afraid I'm going to lose messages there. So if you message me there, that's fine, but you'll get routed to my email so that I keep everything in one place and don't miss a message. So it's pretty easy to get hold of me.
All right. kathybryan.com. You heard that. Now, she's got lots of information. Obviously, she's a wealth of information. I mean, we've only talked for about 40 minutes, and you know that this woman has, after mentoring literally hundreds, I think RBI has graduated, 800 and some students, and you've been there for the majority of all of that.
When I left, it was about 900 in June when I left, so.
Wow. And those materials have been translated into other languages, and you helped to write part of the curriculum. I mean, you're embedded in that program. And I'm so glad that Shared Hope has supported and partnered with RBI's Elevate Academy, because I personally use it all the time. I send people to that program for mentorship when they've come out of the life or even other kinds of abuse like domestic violence and stuff. You have definitely been part of building a powerful program. So I know our audience is inspired to hear how God answers prayers. I mean, what trafficker takes their, if I can say it this way, their golden goose egg, their cash, their little ATM to a parking lot and says, don't ever call me, don't ever reach out, go. This is the only way I can keep you safe. And boom, it's over. I mean, who does? I have never heard that kind of story. I'm sure there are other ways.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways that people get out, but I haven't heard that either in all of the times that I've worked with survivors. And I'm sure it's happened. The Lord works in a lot of amazing ways, so I'm sure it has happened. I just haven't heard of it.
Yes, He does.
It's a
living example of how He answers prayers and makes a way through the impossible. So I'm just going to ask real briefly, Richard, are there any questions that have come in as we've been talking that you would like to pose for Kathy? And then we're going to have her pray for our audience. So
Yeah. Hey, okay, let's see here. So one of the questions, Kathy, that Gail asked earlier was, had your parents talked to your trafficker? They were wondering, as you were talking, they asked, your partners knew him, talked to him?
You mentioned
they ended up thinking that he was a neighbor. They thought he was somebody in the neighborhood, but they didn't know that he was what he was doing, clearly.
Right. Okay. All right. And then Melissa asked, was there any sense of apprehension about going into the house when you guys came back? That first time that he,
The first time,
yeah, that first time
no,
he
there
talked to
wasn't,
you.
and I think that is, I think that's a key. That's a great question, and it's key to remember because it reinforces the reason there wasn't is because there was so much time invested in that 6 months prior, 6.5 months prior. He invested so much time and built that trust, and he didn't. When you think of a trafficker or a predator or a pedophile, a lot of times people think, oh, he must have been using innuendos and trying to, cop a feel and that kind. He wasn't. He was just a friend. And because he wore that mask and he exhibited those behaviors, I totally trusted him. And I think the reason I'm spending some time on this is because a lot of times, not wanting to, we tend to blame the victim. Like, somehow you should have known. And I'm not saying this question was doing that, but it's a great teaching moment because it's hard for us to really fully, unless we've experienced it, realize just the depth that they're willing to go to win that trust. It's worth, with trafficking, financially, it's worth him investing that amount of time to do that. So no, I didn't have any apprehension then. Now, of course, every moment after that was full of fear and apprehension.
Yeah. Richard, do you have any other questions?
That was it. Those were the only two we had.
All right. Well, I'm speaking to our faith audience today, and I just want to say Kathy's going to pray to close this segment of our Facebook Live. And so if there are those that you are concerned about, if there are situations that may seem impossible, she's going to pray for you for that situation and just pray for our audience at large. We all want to be available to God. We all want to be there for this kid or this woman or man, someone who's caught in this. But a lot of times we just don't know how. She's given us so much practical direction today that's just really good. I mean, boots on the ground. This is how you can ask. This is what you can look for. So, Kathy, would you just pray for our audience today as we close?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Lord, I just thank you so much for all the blessings that you bestow on all of us, even when we don't realize and don't credit you with those blessings. You are always here, always protecting, always guiding, and I thank you so much for that. And Lord, I thank you for all of the people who are listening and watching and around the world who are working to fight the good fight, to try to make a difference with all types of abuses. Thank you for that. And I ask for protection for those people that these are dark things. And when you are working in this field, it is dark. But your light always shines through. And I ask, Lord, that you would continue to pull us to your light and let the dark things roll off of us like Teflon so that we continue to do this work, so that we don't burn out, so that we can be guides pointing people to you and helping them and giving them tools to find freedom, the fullness of freedom that comes with healing. And Lord, I just ask that you would open the eyes of parents and school teachers and coaches and people who work with children, foster care families, that they would be attuned to the needs of the children, the vulnerabilities, that they would put the work in to build relationship with children so that they are the people they trust instead of the predators that are out there. Lord, take away from insecurities from parents, because honestly, there's a lot of subjects that kids want to talk about that make us feel like, oh, I don't want to go there. Go there. Win your child's trust. Lord, help them win their child's trust. Lord, just protect all of us. Continue to guide us. Thank you so much for Shared Hope and for the opportunity to do this live, and for the way Shared Hope feeds into this whole movement and all the work they do. Thank you for them. Bless each person here, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Kathy, I can't thank you enough. Today's just been amazing. And I just want to thank you for being you, That's capital YOU. I'm just grateful for you. And I wish we lived close enough just to go out for dinner and have a long chat. But as we close your segment today, is there one thing in particular you'd like to leave with our audience? Any last thought? Because you get the last word.
Ooh, the last word. Yes, I would. I think about eradication. I think that, and I know this seems off topic, but when you fight human trafficking, when you find out about human trafficking, everybody wants to end it. And I want to end it. We can want to eradicate it all day long. But if we're honest, name another crime that we've done that with. Murder, kidnapping, assault, robbery. I mean, they all still exist because of all the broken humans. Trafficking is going to continue to exist as well. But we can mitigate it. We can equip our children and our parents and our communities and our first responders and law enforcement and the judicial system, we can't leave them out, on how to recognize potential traffickers, how to identify the people who are being victimized, and how to properly respond. And it starts with each one of us, you, me, all the people listening. It starts in our homes, it starts in our relationships with each other, and honestly, by treating our children and the most vulnerable with honor. And I think when we do that, that's where the rubber meets the road.
Wow. Boy, that was worth waiting for. Thank you. God bless you as you finish your book, as you're out there educating, just what you said, you're out there educating, you're consulting, you're speaking. We just want to wish you all of God's best. Thank you, Kathy. Now we're going to go back to Richard to talk about what's coming up next. We are so glad you were here. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Whew.
That was super powerful.
That was. It makes me grateful that we have a mighty God, and he can care for those we love. He can come to their rescue. He can come to our rescue when we need him most. Now, Richard, we have another guest next week that you'll be interviewing. You want to talk just a minute about him?
Absolutely. Next week, we have the privilege of bringing Mark Taylor on with us. Mark is a amazing man of God, survivor, one of the first male survivors to speak up during a just event, and actually helped us to put men on the page of what we're looking at, and so we're so proud to be in relationship with him. And another thing that Mark is just amazing with is he's the founder of Buddy House, a tremendous ministry that does really great work. First started in where was he? Started in Wisconsin, I think, but now they're in Georgia. And so there's just so much great work there. We'll let Mark share more about that next Friday.
Yes,
next Friday.
It will be next Friday.
Yeah,
right here on Facebook Live.
Yep.
It's September 24th, same time, 10 o'clock Pacific, 1 o'clock Eastern. You'll get an email early next week with more information and the link to join us for Shared Hope's Faith Initiatives Facebook Live.
Yeah, so it's going to be a really great time. Definitely just be there. It's always great to hear from a male survivor, Victor. Mm-hmm. He likes to use the word Victor. His story is painful. We had the opportunity to film his story several months ago, and it's really hard to listen to. But it's also really encouraging to listen to see where Mark is at and the great work that Mark is doing. And so anyways, I just really want to encourage everyone to be there. Just thank you so much for being here today. What Kathy just shared was amazing and wonderful, especially right there at the end. I loved her last words because that's the truth. Every other crime is still here. But we can absolutely mitigate it. So thank you everyone for being with us. If you've enjoyed these programs, please consider just making a donation to Shared Hope. You can just go to sharedhope.org/donate. and help us continue doing this great work, because we want to continue partnering with other organizations and other survivors like Kathy and Rebecca Bender Initiative, and we just want to keep doing this work and keep mitigating this terrible crime.
Yeah.
But we want to raise up survivor victors and see them have their voice. And so
Yes. And if people want to know who we partner with and what we're doing in that aspect, you can go to our website on what we do prevent and see the partners internationally and domestically. We have about 10 or 11 domestic partners, and we have 3 international partners that we've had for a number of years. So yes, learn more about who we are and what we do and who we're helping. And of course, our survivor leader voices are so vital. So vital. So be sure and reach out. Kathy gave you her information, kathybryan.org, and see what she's doing to educate and teach. And perhaps you'll find an opening where you'd like to have her come speak to your organization. God bless you. We'll see you next week. My last words is God is big enough.
yes, he is. Amen. See you guys. Thank you.